Yes, be happy to. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Aaron Wilkes. I am an energy trader. I also own several small businesses and tutor students on a finance website. Students who are mostly interested in like the trading area. I've spoken to quite a few of them on Wall Street Oasis. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And my first question for you is, what is the Wall Street Oasis? I've heard a lot about it through LinkedIn, and I'm curious to understand more, as I'm sure many students are as well.
Yeah, so it started off a long time ago as more of a forum, and it was just kind of a way for students to learn about the finance recruiting process and the recruiting cycles for, say like investment banking and venture capital, private equity, that kind of thing. But it just evolved from there into a full like training platform. So they offer different training courses. They have mentors from the industry that are signed up on there to do sessions or interview prep or resume reviews for um, the students that are on the site. And the forums are still very active, so I participate in those as well. Just kind of helping to give students guidance on the industry and how to break in and just practical advice and tips and that sort of thing.
And just curious, do you think something like this would have helped you a lot when you were a student?
I kind of was using it when I was a student in my master's program,
Okay.
just to kind of learn more about what my options were because I wasn't sure at that time if I would stay in trading like very long term or if I wanted to try to pivot into something else. And so I did end up staying in trading, and so I've been doing that for over 10 years now. But yeah, it was helpful
Wow.
for me at the time just to kind of see what the alternatives were and what else was out there and kind of just get some insight from folks that had worked in different types of roles.
So you've been in trading for 10 years and you've gotten a lot of exposure through the Wall Street Oasis, two different roles. So I'm curious, why did you stick with trading as opposed to perhaps pursuing other businesses, which you've also done?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. I think ultimately I just really enjoyed trading. It's kind of like a game to me. And so, yeah, it's like just something that I want to be good at. And it's also fun and entertaining. It's very dynamic and it always keeps you on your toes. So I kind of figured that maybe some of the other career paths might not be as interesting or as dynamic or even fun for me personally, because I kind of get bored easily. And maybe that's why I've done so many things or, started all these businesses and
Yeah.
all these different efforts. Like we joke that, like what have I not tried to invest in or that kind of thing. My family jokes like that. So yeah, I've tried quite a few things, and it's been a learning process. I think one of the big things that I've learned is, you have to understand what is your investor DNA, as they call it. And so what that means
Okay.
is, like what types of investments or businesses or, whatever it might be, are you interested in that you want to put your money and your time towards? And so for me, I learned that, I was kind of always looking for more passive income
Okay.
than active income. And so, kind of starting some of these businesses, I realized, well, maybe I just end up giving myself too many things to do. Um, too many like businesses that turned into another job, which I wasn't trying to, necessarily give myself another job when I started some of these. And so,
Okay.
actually, kind of backing off of some of them at the moment and
Okay.
looking to sell maybe one or two of these businesses and just kind of focus my efforts more on other areas.
So when you started a lot of these businesses, it was more just because, like, I guess you were bored and saw a gap in the market that you could fill?
Yeah, I tried to, find businesses that I thought would suit me well in terms of interest, but also, ones that seemed like they would make good returns.
Okay.
And so it was kind of a combination of things, but ultimately, my initial goal was passive income, and I liked real estate a lot. Like I do some of that, and I plan to do more of that going forward. But I kind of got into a couple investments that, looking back, like, I don't regret them because it's been a learning experience. And I think that, um, the hard lessons are that way for a reason. They're
Yeah.
hard because they teach you things. You learn from these not mistakes, but difficult kind of challenges. I'll call them. And so, yeah, for me, that's what I learned was, I would prefer to do more passive style investing, like as a limited partner in real estate deals with operators who know what they're doing, who understand their markets very well, and just kind of, underwriting deals from a more of an LP standpoint than, being very active in them, or, taking a very active role like in a business.
And what do you think the key differentiator is between someone that's running a business and working for someone? You've done your own businesses, you've worked for organizations as well. So, in your perspective, what do you think the biggest, maybe, what are the drawbacks and what are the competitive advantages that you gain from both
Yeah, good
career
question.
aspects?
Hmm. I think for me, like, I've always gravitated towards more entrepreneurial type organizations. And so, like, I started my career off at a large oil and gas company, and they weren't very entrepreneurial because it's more corporate, it's more kind of standardized across, and so not a lot of opportunity necessarily to branch out and do different things. But since I have been working for like hedge funds and prop shops for about 8 years, or a little over 8 years now, um, some of those have been a lot more of the entrepreneurial type flow. And so, for example, you could start trading in new markets, you could start trading new products. You can, like, I founded a new area of the business for one of my prop shops. Kind of doing that now as well at my current company. Um, and so I think a differentiator for me is like entrepreneurial drive, just the desire to create, I think, is something that sets people apart, because motivation is ultimately like a huge factor. Um, and that's true whether you're in, a job, a 9 to 5 type job. You report to somebody, you have a boss, or you are your own boss. You know, just your motivation and your drive to succeed, I think, has to be present, and then you can kind of compound that with your strengths, and find out how to utilize those, and as an input into the business. As far as drawbacks go, I would say, um, like I had talked about earlier, investment, or rather investor DNA, just kind of understanding who you are as an investor. It's important to be really honest with yourself and take stock of, like, who am I as an investor? Like, what do I want to accomplish? What's the best path for me? For a lot of people, it's, they are fine investing in equities, or stock and bond portfolios, that kind of thing. I prefer not to do that anymore. I used to do a little bit of that, and again, more passively. I wasn't super active in trading in those markets, because I do enough trading in my regular job, so I didn't want to, like, do more trading in after hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of why I kind of backed away from those things, and instead decided to invest that money into business and into real estate. So
And
um,
a lot of the students watching today, they want to go into fields like investment banking or eventually portfolio management of some sort. So,
mhm.
what do you think the challenges are in the future? We've seen the rise of AI, but we've also seen somewhat, I guess, developing news in things like the oil sector or natural minerals, things like that. So I guess I'm curious, what are your thoughts? What do you think will happen? Do you think it's going to be a major pivot in the coming years? Or is social media perhaps blowing things out of proportion?
Mm. Yeah, good question there. I think that like AI has created some job loss, even in my particular field and industry. I think from my perspective, like some of the, I'll say maybe less talented traders kind of got pushed out of the market because when AI came in and it was so much easier to have all this data at your fingertips and to use it and manipulate it and all of that, it kind of raised the bar for the market. And so those that were under that, they kind of just fell off or they weren't successful. So I did see and did notice that some people got kind of pushed out from that. So there was definitely, some trading jobs that I wouldn't call them like replaced by AI, but if the performance was kind of mediocre to begin with, then it was something that probably got overshadowed by somebody else. And in trading, in what I do in particular, if you do a good job at trading, it's a lot about inefficiencies, and so you're finding inefficiencies in the market. You're kind of exploiting those, obviously in a legal way, but the ability to see something that you see as incorrect in the market and capitalize on it can be profitable. And so it kind of in raising the bar, a lot of the opportunities got crowded, I think, with more algorithms in play, with more advanced techniques of arbitrage. I think it kind of killed a lot of the opportunities maybe that existed before. And so, plus, like just in general, the industry has been attracting more folks, and so it's become more competitive. So you have to be better to succeed than I think used to be the case.
Yeah.
And I think in the future going forward, you know, um, I think AI will create some jobs that don't currently exist, or
Okay.
people will find new ways to leverage it that we're not really thinking of right now. And so every business that I see, like on LinkedIn or wherever it is on social media, um, talking about AI, they're trying to figure out how do I incorporate AI into my business. What should I be doing? Because everybody's talking about it, everybody's using it, and many people are saying if you're not using it in your business, then you're behind, um, and you need to catch up. So I think we're seeing how to apply it, as evidenced by people who are leaders in the field, kind of at the forefront, and then everyone else is trying to either replicate that or come up with their own way to use it. But I found use cases in my trading with it. I would say I mostly use it as like a learning tool. To be honest, I think
Okay.
AI becomes dangerous when you use it to just do things for you
Yeah.
because it's easy, kind of the lazy way, I'll say. You
Yeah.
know, uh, that's when you can actually see some adverse effects of AI. Is if you're just like, hey, I don't want to write this email, write it for me, or I don't want to do this task, so do it for me. Like efficiencies are important, yes, but at the same time, like some things you can augment with AI without having it completely doing it for you. Um, and so that's where the danger comes in is when you get complacent thinking that AI can do everything for you. But I just use it mostly to learn. Like I just want to understand things better. So I feel like my learning has increased a lot
Yeah.
rapidly in a short amount of time. Um, and that's my primary use for it. But I do have other ways that I use it for different things like programming and that sort of thing. So
And I just want to take a moment to pivot a little bit and maybe ask you, what's your favorite football team?
oh, my favorite football team, I would have to say the Houston Texans.
Okay.
I live here in Houston, and yeah, they're the local team. So yeah, they're my favorite team.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate you asking.
I'm a bit of a Chiefs fan, but I won't
Okay.
hold that against you. But then that takes me into my next question about geography a little bit. How important do you think geography is, or how big of a role has it played for you played for you, sorry, especially as you are trading in oil and gas for the most part, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, you could say energy. More specifically, I'm trading in power markets, a little bit of natural gas, but
Okay.
yeah. So location is important. I think, you know, trading is still a little bit old school in some ways, in that larger companies have a trade floor typically. Um, and so it's a lot of, going into the office,
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily 5 days a week. They may have some more hybrid arrangements now than they used to, but definitely like some office presence. So I've been at places where I had to go into the office as a trader. I've also been at some companies that were hybrid and some that were fully remote. So right now I'm fully remote. I think that's become a little bit more popular since like COVID, but Houston is definitely like the center for energy, generally speaking. So living here definitely gives you a leg up in terms of just the amount of opportunities that you have available to you in the energy field, because a lot of the large companies are based here or have a large presence here. And so, yeah, it's not to say that if you live somewhere else you can't be in this industry or do well. Certainly, other major cities have energy trading and other types of trading. There are other financial centers around the U.S. And there's opportunity to work remotely. So, but to break in, if you want to break into energy, definitely Houston is probably the easiest place to do that. So, if that's your goal and you're open to relocating, Houston is a good place to be. And cost of living here is relatively low as well.
So you've been living in Houston essentially your entire life, by what it sounds to me, and then you're at the forefront of energy. So what do you think the future of energy looks like? I'm sure you probably have a lot of information, especially if you're trading daily. So do you think the green revolution is here to stay, or what does the future of energy look like?
Yeah, the future looks a lot different than the present, I think. Um, the biggest issues right now with the grid are that, we have a lot of renewables now. We're always gaining more renewables, but the biggest thing that everyone's talking about at the moment are data centers.
Yeah.
And so there's many, tech companies that are developing these large, very large data centers. Um, so much so that the demand projections for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years are very extreme, just based on purely data center demand. um, and I don't know that we'll actually meet the demand projections, but they're kind of just basing it on what projects they're seeing come into the interconnection queue at the moment, and like the backlog that that has created. And like in one market, for example, if you want to connect your data center to the grid and just take like grid power, then it's going to take like 8 years to be able
Oh,
to
wow.
do that. Yeah, a long time.
8
We're
years.
also seeing bottlenecks. Yeah, yeah, 8 years. We're also seeing bottlenecks in like natural gas turbines for power plants, um, which is a major technology that they're utilizing for data centers. They're starting to do and are doing like behind the meter generation for data centers, which means that essentially they have their own power plant supplying them at least part of their energy needs. One other area that is up and coming is something called virtual power plants, which I actually wrote a book on this topic.
Okay.
Um, but essentially, a virtual power plant is just an aggregation of a lot of tiny resources. Like in California, they're kind of leading the way with virtual power plants. They have a lot of rooftop solar that's aggregated, and so they've been able to take thousands of homes and kind of package them together in such a way that they can control, um, with software, the like smart thermostats or EV chargers, or home batteries, things like that. And when you combine all of these tiny little resources into essentially one thing, even though they're spread across a location or locations, they aggregate them into one resource. So now it's at a utility scale level and can participate in wholesale markets, which are have some advantages over just retail markets. So that's one thing that actually can reduce stress on the grid and also provide a lot of opportunities for the grid operators to be able to better manage the supply and demand balance of the power system. And honestly, like the transmission infrastructure on the power grid is mostly very old, needs to be updated, especially around data centers.
Yeah.
And that process is usually much slower. It's slower than the data center, like the time it takes for a data center to get constructed and go live. And so that's also creating kind of a bottleneck around, okay, well, what transmission upgrades have to be done to support this data center so that it doesn't, cause some issues with the power system, because you can't really just place a small city here and say, okay, give me power,
Yeah.
and think that it's going to connect to all the transmission lines properly. You're going to have to do upgrades and higher voltage lines and transformers and whatnot. So there are some struggles with it, but I think the future looks like a lot more AI demand, um, data center growth for sure. Population growth continues to be a thing. Also large commercial and industrial demand um, will increase, and renewables will continue to increase as well, which creates more intermittency on the grid, which ultimately creates more volatility. So renewables, while they sound good, they actually do present some issues when you look at how they affect flows on the grid. And so, um, but there are different ways to mitigate that, including virtual power plants, like I mentioned. So, yeah, that's kind of my view on what the future of the industry looks like.
That's Aaron Wilkes. I know that you're a busy man, sir, so I only have one more question for you. How big
Sure.
of a role would you say that faith has played for you when you've been starting these businesses, you've been working, even as a student, you went for your BBA and then you went for your master's. How big of a role has it played for you?
Definitely a huge role. I mean, it's central to who I am, to my life, and so from that standpoint, it's always kind of top of mind, or something that comes first. And so I try to be like faith forward with what I do, and just being open to share who I am genuinely and authentically. I've found that it breeds better connections, more quality connections, because you'll find out pretty quickly if somebody has similar beliefs or similar way of thinking. And so it's a common ground that you can find quite easily, and connect more deeply with folks. um, and so I find the more authentic that I am with my faith, then the better relationships I end up creating through that. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that I would encourage people to lean into if it's something that they do possess. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun. Enjoyed talking about things, and hopefully it's helpful to the listeners.